Hello everyone, this is Teacher Tess and welcome to our video lesson for today. In this lesson, we are going to discuss the purposes and features of poetry. The objectives in this lesson are: identify the purpose and features of poetry, define the different structure elements of poetry, and compose an original poem by following the given model. Short review. Write down significant information you can recall about lyric, dramatic, and narrative poetry. Use the following illustration as your guide. Based on the previous task, answer the following questions. Number 1. What is lyric poetry? Number 2. How is it different from dramatic poetry? And number 3. How is it different from narrative poetry? Unlocking content vocabulary. Read the sample poem that follows and pay attention to how the poem is formed and structured. Now, answer the following questions. Number 1. What words rhyme? Number 2. How many lines does a poem have? Number 3. What lines are similarly structured? Number 4. What is the purpose of the writer? Give your reasons. 5. Do you think it has musicality? Why? And number 6. What does the poem want to convey? Spot the difference. Read and analyze the given poems. Then, fill out the chart to show if the given structure elements are present or not. What are the purposes and features of poetry? Lyric poetry. Lyric poetry refers to a short poem, often with song-like qualities, that expresses the speaker's personal emotions and feelings. Historically intended to be sung and accompany a musical instrumentation, lyric now describes a broad category of non-narrative poetry, including elegies, odes, and sonnets. Now here are the purposes of lyric poetry. Express personal emotions, encourage emotional resonance, offer introspection and reflection, celebrate beauty and art, explore personal and universal themes, provide catharsis and healing, and reflect cultural and historical context. Narrative poetry. Narrative poem is the oldest form of poetry and one of the oldest forms of literature. It is used to tell a story. In narrative poetry, the poet combines elements of storytelling like plot, setting, and characters with elements of poetry such as form, meter, rhyme, and poetic devices. Here are the purposes of narrative poetry. Tell a story, explore themes and morals, preserve and share cultural stories, provide entertainment and engagement, explore complex characters and situations, enhance emotional and intellectual impact, experiment with form and language, and capture historical and social contexts. Dramatic poetry. Dramatic poetry is a form of poetry that is written in verse and meant to be recited in public or acted out. Dramatic poetry is often in the form of long speeches, either to another actor, the audience, or oneself by musing aloud. Here are the purposes of dramatic poetry. Explore character and conflict. Enhance theatrical experience. examine themes and human experience, create emotional impact, showcase poetic techniques, provide social and historical commentary, and facilitate complex storytelling. Here are the structure elements of poetry: conflict, character, characterization, plot, rhyme and meter, diction, tone and mood, style, patterns and motifs, figures of speech and sound devices, and point of view and narrative techniques. What is conflict? Conflict as an element of poetry refers to the central struggle or tension that drives the poem's narrative or emotional content. It is an essential component that adds depth and interest to the poem, engaging readers and providing insight into the themes and characters. A conflict can be internal or external. Internal conflict means character versus himself, while external conflict includes character versus character, character versus society, and character versus nature. The next is character. Character as an element of poetry refers to the individuals or entities presented within the poem who drive the narrative, embody themes, and engage with conflicts. There are different types of character in poetry. The first is speaker. It refers to the voice or persona through which the poem is narrated. The next is protagonist. It refers to the central character around whom the poem's action or narrative revolves. The next is antagonist. It refers to the character or force that opposes the protagonist, creating conflicts and tension in the poem. And the last is the minor characters. It refers to the characters who play secondary roles and contribute to the development of the plot or themes but are not central to the narrative. The next structure element of poetry is characterization. Characterization in poetry refers to the techniques and methods poets use to develop and portray characters within their poems. Characterization involves presenting characters in a way that reveals their traits, motivations, and roles, allowing readers to understand and connect with them. The next structure element of poetry is plot. Plot as an element of poetry refers to the sequence of events or actions that drive the narrative within a poem. Poets may use different techniques in presenting the plot in poetry, such as linear technique. This technique presents events in chronological order from beginning to end. It follows a straightforward, sequential timeline. Another technique used in presenting the plot is flashback. This interrupts the chronological flow of the story to present events that happened at an earlier time. The next structure element of poetry is rhyme. Rhyme involves the repetition of similar sounds, typically at the end of lines in a poem. It creates a sense of harmony and rhythm. There are also different types of rhyme. The first is end rhyme, where final words of lines rhyme. The next is internal rhyme, which means rhyming within a single line. The next type of rhyme is slant rhyme, which is also known as near rhyme, where the sounds are similar but not exact. And the last one is I rhyme, where words look like they should rhyme because of their spelling but don't sound alike. The next structure element of poetry is meter. Meter refers to the structured rhythm of a poem determined by the arrangement of stressed and unstressed syllables in each line. There are different types of meter. The first is iambic meter, where each foot has an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. For example, today. The next type of meter is trochaic meter, where each foot has a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. For example, table. The next type of meter is anapestic meter, where each foot has two unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable, as in intervene. And the last type of meter is dactylic meter, where each foot has a stressed syllable followed by two unstressed syllables. For example, elephant. The next structure element to poetry is diction. Diction in poetry refers to the poet's choice of words and their arrangement. The next is tone. Tone in poetry refers to the poet's attitude toward the subject matter, characters, or audience as conveyed through their choice of words, style, and overall approach. The next is mood. Mood in poetry refers to the emotional atmosphere or feeling that the poem evokes in the reader. The next structure element to poetry is style. Style in poetry refers to the distinctive way in which a poet expresses ideas and emotions through language. The next is pattern. A pattern in poetry refers to a recurring structure or arrangement that provides consistency and contributes to the poem's form and rhythm. The next structure element to poetry is motif. A motif is a recurring element such as an image, symbol, theme, or idea that has symbolic significance and helps to develop the poem's themes and messages. The next is figures of speech. They are literary devices used in poetry to create vivid imagery, express abstract ideas, and evoke emotional responses. The common figures of speech used in poetry are simile, metaphor, personification, and hyperbole. The next is sound devices. They are techniques used to create musicality, rhythm, and emphasis through the use of sound. Some common sound devices used in poetry are alliteration, assonance, consonance, onomatopoeia, and rhyme. The next is point of view. Point of view in poetry refers to the perspective from which the poem is written and narrated. The common points of view used in poetry are first person, second person, and third person point of view. And the last is narrative technique. Narrative technique in poetry refers to the methods and approaches used by a poet to tell a story or present a sequence of events. Lesson activity. Read the given example poem. Compose your own original poem by following the given model. You may choose from the following set of ideas as writing prompts. Here are the suggested topics: drought, sun, land; love, God, society; third, flood, water, debris; 4, war, soldiers, freedom; and last, progress, hard work, innovation. Rubrics for grading the poem. This ends our lesson about purposes and features of poetry. Hope you learned something and hope to see you again in my next videos. Again, this is Teacher Tess saying thank you for watching. Have a great day.